How does a group of 20-year-olds make a horror film that Stephen King himself would call the most ferociously original horror film of the year, despite facing numerous setbacks from running out of money, burning furniture to stay warm during one of the coldest winters on record, and filming on the set of a real-life ghost story?
Let's talk about it. Hello, my name is Montgomery and welcome to Bloody Good. Today we're talking about the behind-the-scenes chaos of the Evil Dead film, the film that put Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell on the map. We're going to be talking about everything from the drug-fueled trips on set to a production so chaotic at one point Sam Raimi left the set to go lie on the ground and die.
Sam Raimi's filmmaking journey started with his father purchasing a Super 8 camera. Sam Raimi would go on to use this to make films with his longtime collaborators Rob Tabert and Bruce Campbell. It was in 1975 at Groves High School when the future director, Sam Raimi, would meet and become fast friends with the pair, making numerous short films with one another.
Mostly making short films, the trio would go on to make over 13 different short films with a lot of childhood collaborators. Now, while in college, Sam Raimi would take advantage of the auditorium which he was allowed to rent out for cheap to distribute some of these films. Now, it was also during this time when they noticed the popularity of a new genre of drive-in horror films.
During the era of drive-ins, unrated horror movies from parts unknown would pop up out of nowhere, gaining both notoriety and infamy. These times birthed movie franchises such as Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Hills Have Eyes, and Night of the Living Dead. The majority of these films were made by first-time filmmakers with small crews and even smaller budgets. And this was the perfect opportunity for Sam Raimi to make his mark.
So, Sam Raimi and his friends dropped out of college. They worked as busboys, waiters, and taxi drivers in order to keep the lights on. They started working on this dream project of theirs called Book of the Dead, later to be retitled Evil Dead, of course. Now, they also needed to work on a short to convince potential investors to actually invest their money into a feature film.
The short film was called Within the Woods, a 32-minute short with a budget of $1,600, which showed off the basic story and many of the intended shots that would be present in the final film. They were able to fund this horror film due to numerous investors, from dentists to people working in real estate. Now, reports vary, but from what we can tell, the goal was to raise $90,000, but they were able to raise somewhere around $150,000.
Now, with the money raised, the crew packed up their bags and gear and headed to Tennessee, arriving November 11th, 1979. However, there was a problem. The cabin they'd planned to shoot on and agreed with had dropped out last minute due to cold feet. So they began scrambling. They shot everything they could that didn't involve a cabin, which you might be thinking, doesn't most of this film involve a cabin? Yes it does.
Running out of things to shoot, they were able to secure a new cabin location. It wasn't ideal. However, first and foremost, the door had been knocked down.
By what, do you ask? An evil spirit, perhaps? No. It was a group of cows and, to be honest, other animals in these woods that had made their way in and through the cabin. So many passing through, in fact, that they had covered the floor in shit. There was, in fact, 4 inches of feces covering the entire floor of the cabin, which the crew had to clear.
This was due to the cabin being long abandoned for sinister reasons.
But more on that later. Now, as stated, the mess left behind by the previous occupants of the cabin had to be cleaned up by the entire crew, and this included the star of the film, Bruce Campbell. In fact, it took them over a week to convert the cabin into something usable. This included building a fireplace, reinstalling the front door, and building a fake trapdoor in the cabin.
The film was shot on 16mm,
Not quite the quality of your 35mm blockbuster,
but a step above the quality of the 8mm home movies and low-budget shorts the crews were used to. The production was fraught with injuries, last-minute changes, and a constant fight against the elements.
The cabin itself was located in a remote wooden area, with the closest civilization being a farmhouse 4 miles away. The road to get to the cabin was a dirty, muddy road that proved difficult to navigate. Because of this, the majority of the crew and cast decided to actually lodge in the cabin itself.
The crew consisted of around 7 to 8 members, with a variety of skill levels in their respective departments. During filming, multiple injuries occurred to almost everyone on screen. During Ellen Sandwise's scenes where she was running through the forest, not only was she tripping and falling multiple times, she was repeatedly cutting herself on tree branches and just about everything else, covering the nearby makeshift dolly track with her blood.
Injuries like these were frequent and sympathy was rare. I mean, just have a listen to what Rob Tabert had to say about one of these on-set injuries.
And I said something unkind about actresses being cut And that's when I know they were finally working hard, but I don't remember saying it.
Way to be a dick, Rob.
However, for better or for worse, all the actors were subjected to torture, not just one, with Bruce Campbell sporting a sprained ankle due to a running scene, which Sam Raimi would poke with a stick for weeks until it healed.
The situation was dire, with many of the cast and crew spending weeks in the cabin with no running water, no heating, and no indoor plumbing. In fact, the only way to wash your hands was to use the scalding hot water of a coffee maker. Bruce Campbell would be covered in so much filth and muck after a day of shooting, he would be transported from the cabin back to civilization in the back of a pickup truck so he didn't ruin the inside of the truck itself.
Now, while Sam Raimi often drew out crude storyboards using stick figures to plan scenes, they were rarely used. But the innovative camera techniques did impress the crew. A couple to highlight was the famous scene of the Spirit POV, which was achieved by having the camera attached to a 2x4 and held at either end by a crew member. The camera gliding across the lake was done by Sam Raimi operating the camera in a small boat and Bruce Campbell pushing it along. When the Spirit entered the cabin, smashing through the glass. They did this by mounting the camera to a bike, riding it straight towards the window, and using a real baseball bat to smash a real window. The famous shot where the camera spins over the top of Bruce Campbell's head was executed by Sam Raimi once again, operating the camera while strung up on the rafters of the cabin, using his core strength to pull himself over Bruce Campbell to accomplish the mesmerizing shot.
Now, in the original script, there was a scene that involved the teenagers smoking weed, and the cast, or at least some of them, decided to go method with this. Now, not much is known about what really happened during this day, but not much was accomplished, and the scene was ultimately scrapped from the film.
Now, there is a popular rumour that the actors left production due to the awful conditions, but this isn't true. The actors were hired on a set period of time and left due to other commitments.
There's this myth that, the Evil Dead cured me of any desire to act. I immediately quit acting as a result of the Evil Dead. That's crap.
I know people say that we were mad and we left, but that really wasn't the case at all. I mean, all of us had things to do. We had all fulfilled our commitment and our contract, but then they just continued with other ideas afterwards.
This was due to the production originally only being planned to shoot for 6 weeks. In total, it went on for 12. And by the end of it, the crew and cast were freezing. They were hit with the coldest winter in Tennessee in over a decade. The muddy roads outside the cabin froze, forcing the crew to lug equipment a quarter of a mile by foot. The situation got so dire, the cast and crew ended up burning furniture inside the cabin just to stay warm. At one point, Sam Raimi went outside the cabin to, quote, lie on the floor and die. Fortunately for us, a crew member came out and put a blanket over him. So we still have him to this day.
There was also an unsettling atmosphere in the cabin for another reason. The cabin was originally built by one man, over 100 years before the production of The Evil Dead. The man who built the cabin died just a week after finishing construction, and for 20 years after this, the cabin was untouched, until a mother with her daughter and grandmother moved in. One night, the daughter awoke during a thunderstorm and found both her mother and grandmother had died in their sleep. The daughter ran 4 miles to the local farmhouse nearby. A cause of death was never discovered, and the family that took her in ended up adopting her. But every night when it thundered, the little girl would go off walking into the woods, with the family finding her the next day. The family looked after the little girl until she was an old woman. One day during filming, the crew were approached by the family of the farmhouse, saying the old woman had wandered off into the woods the night before and hadn't been found. They never did find her in the end. With an additional 2 weeks shot at Bruce Campbell's family property and Rob Tappard's family cabin, and then another several more weeks shooting various scenes at Sam Raimi's parents' home, production dragged. As the film continued and the budget increased, it was Bruce Campbell who would take money out of his family's property in order to keep the film going.
The post-production for this film was done in New York City, where at one point Sam Raimi and the crew ran into Tom Savini on the street, famous for his work on the Dawn of the Dead franchise. They dragged him into the editing room to get his advice on the film.
The film was first shown to audiences at the Redford Theatre, with a screening done for the investors of the film. They packed the audience with high schoolers, and during the scenes, the teens yelled and shouted at the screen in excitement. This was when they knew they had something special. The same thing happened again when they took it internationally. Its official premiere was October 15th, 1981.
But there was a problem.
Due to the film's intense gore that audiences today know and love, the film was left unrated. This made it a nightmare to advertise the film, and it was mostly popular at grindhouse theatres.
Theatres that were famous for showing unsavory films in dark basements. However, the people who did see it loved it. One of those people being Stephen King, who saw it at a distribution screening and wrote a review for the film, calling it
the most ferociously original horror film of the year.
The film was a boom during its home release and at one point was allegedly the most stolen videotape in America.
In the end, the film's original cost of $150,000 had ballooned to $500,000. But with video sales and a cult status, the film generated over $2,661,944 and spawned 2 direct sequels, 3 spin-offs, and a TV show with video games and comic books that followed, cementing its place in the history of horror, inspiring future filmmakers and launching the careers of Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell.
And if you want to know where Ash Williams' story took him next, click the link on your screen right now to watch a video we made covering just that. In the meantime, I've been Montgomery, and this has been bloody good. Thank you so much for watching.